I'm using old book pages to make a signature for a journal. This is part 2 in a series. In part 1, I collaged this cover. Hello, it's Joey, and today we're making a junk journal, which is my absolute favourite project. I'm using all sorts of beautiful papers, and we'll do it step by step. Hit the subscribe button below if you love making junk journals too, and let's start by choosing our papers. Then I'll fold and trim them and sew the signature in. There are 4 design features that I look for in my papers when I'm making a junk journal. So as well as showing you how I put a signature inside a journal, how I actually trim down and fold the papers, how I choose what order they go in, and then how I sew them in, I also want to talk you through my thought process for choosing the particular papers, because it's the choice of papers and how we mix and match them that I think is the real magic in making a junk journal. I have pulled quite a few from the various packets and pockets and books that I have lying around my craft room. So I thought what I'd do is show you some of these and why I've chosen them, and then we'll trim them down, fold them and sew them in. This collection is quite different from the packet of papers that I used when I was making the cover. This is what we did last week. I collaged a cover and we added a focal point. Now I'm moving on to a collection of papers which to begin with will be slightly limited by size, so I do want to use both old book pages, and that is one of my criteria, but I also want something that will broadly fit in what's roughly an A5 size cover. So some of the papers I've pulled out here are larger than the ones that I was using to rip off pieces and the scraps that I was using in the collage cover last week. So yes, I want to use old book pages such as this. So this is one that you might have seen in my previous videos. It's a super vintage piece of beautiful old dictionary paper. This is the book. You can see how it's gone down. And I just love using this in junk journals on their side. So I fold it that way in many of my journals. And I also stamp and paint on it. And I really, really enjoy doing that. I'd like to have some vintage book pages in this, and indeed a lot of the papers that I've pulled together and put in this are old book pages, and that's really the purpose of this series, to put together a junk journal where we are primarily using old book pages for both the cover, for the collage, and also for the pages inside. Here's a lovely page from a book about birds, and I've used this book several times. Some of you may remember the little pocket folder that I made quite a while ago now. We had so much fun filling it with lots of lovely goodies, making pockets and envelopes. And some of those pages lend themselves quite well, I think, to sitting in a junk journal. So I wanted to use some more of those pages. That was a lovely project. I did enjoy that. Ooh, look at that. I mean, just look at that. Yeah, addictive, another addictive project. So one of my pages also benefits from being relatively neutral, and the size of it is okay because when I fold that, I'm likely to get both a bird on one side, a bird on the other, and it won't be cutting them in half in the picture. So I'm thinking about that as I'm choosing pages to put in my collection, and then I'll whittle down. I'll select from this probably a dozen or so, and we'll trim them down and sew them together. So I'll just share some thoughts on what I put in this little wallet, and then we can reduce them and we'll see what we end up with for the junk journal. I have a page from a German dictionary, a beautiful page with flowers on, and as I look at this I'm thinking, would these tone with a palette of colours in the journal? Do I want there to be a palette of colours? Would it lend itself to going sideways? Would I need to cut it in half? These are the thoughts that I'm having as I'm looking at the pages. I pulled out a page from a child's book. So this one is a Hans Christian Andersen book that I've used quite a few times in my junk journals. And what I like about this, as well as the paper, which is now slightly vanilla, it has a bold font, and we have some really great illustrations, and I feel there's a fantasy feel about that. There's something magical, and I like seeing that in a junk journal. I want that to come into the story as we turn the pages. As I look at this, I'm also thinking that although it's wide For this journal, let's test the size, I could fold this page over easily, and I could also think about this being a double side with some folds in, and I like to use folds in my journals to make life more interesting. A more modern page, more square, I like the colours in the picture, and the reason I pulled on this one is the thickness. So one of the criteria in my 4 design features when I'm putting papers together is to get that contrast. I want book pages, I want different sizes, I want contrast of font and a little bit of contrast of colour. And I also want to be able to, my 4th criteria, use it for painting and decorating and creating some art, and the thicker pages are quite helpful for that. So this is a good size, and it's quite thick, and it's matte. So quite a lot of positive features there. This is a page from a textbook, so although it wouldn't qualify on the grounds of being particularly thick to paint on, it has that tappety light attribute, that gentle, slightly see-through feel. So very light, different, and we've got some technical font on there, and there is just something about that that I really love. So that's a candidate. I have a page from a French dictionary, a Roget's Thesaurus, really old, nice and yellowing. I pulled out a couple of pages from a children's book, and this is the one that I used on each of the covers. I ripped it in half, and this was the bold font. So there's something about continuity from the cover that I might like to include, and that would fold really easily. A couple of those. Something jumped out at me, and I don't know if this will fit in or not, but this is the cover to a Victorian flower album by Henry Terry, which is a book I've used many times in creating various journals. In fact, this is one of the pages from the book. In each of the pages is relatively thick, and it has these wonderful vintage designs, painted plants, flowers, wildflowers, with a lovely little handwritten name of the flower in what looks like a fountain pen, and even pencil. So the pages in this book have been incredible, and I've had so much enjoyment from it. In fact, a number of the junk journals I sell in my Etsy shop have been using this cover. So that, I thought, is a possibility. I really don't want to waste the cover or the front page of a book. I'd love to be able to bring that in. Another page from that child's book, maps, always incredibly interesting and useful, and I do tend to gravitate to these greens, which might be why a number of these covers have got these gorgeous teals and maps and beautiful greens in the corner here. So that's a possibility, even though it's glossy. This was part of an encyclopedia page, nice and matte, and even though it's small, again, one of my criteria is having different size papers in a journal. Here's an example to show those different size papers. So not only do I have fold outs, different sizes, and lots of interest going on, even quite small pieces. On this one, I thought, why not have a different size cover? So I let the map page finish quite early, and even though that folds in, I've just let that be short of the width of the journal. I loved filling this one. This is a couple of years old now, but sometimes when I go back and look at things, they give me fresh ideas and fresh impetus, fresh motivation for making and filling more journals. Are you passionate about making journals, or is it filling them that really, really makes you happy? Let me know in a comment down below. I love using William Shakespeare books in all of my projects, for making pockets and for filling journals with pages. So I pulled that, a simple piece of scrapbook paper with some beautiful green, another page from the Henry Terry Victorian flower album. Really nice paper. When I find a really beautiful page in a book, sometimes I put those on the side and I have a little package of them. I thought this would be great for that kind of winter feel. The beautiful cranberry coloured reds and the frost on these. Isn't that great for putting in a winter's journal? Doesn't need to be festive or Christmassy. I think that would work really well. And some more of that natural wildlife. So gorgeous pictures. I also like bringing some of the British countryside feel into my journals. And this comes from an enormous book that I have. So this obviously had a cover at some point. And it is one of those coffee table books with beautiful pictures of various places in the British countryside. Sorry about that glare. So what do we have in here? So I think this is a couple of Cambridge colleges. So that was the one next door but one to mine. I've got one of the pages here, happened to be my college. So I pulled that out and I might use that somehow. Beautiful buildings and a sense of, warmth, happy countryside. Maybe the Cotswolds. I'm so sorry about that glare. Beautiful pictures. So can I incorporate some of this, and will it go with the theme and the palette that I'm choosing today? I could even continue with a winter theme. So a gorgeous, gorgeous fat and large book. So the pages I tore out as candidates are Lake District, something with a very spring feel, and as I said, my college, and just sharing a tiny bit. So this is a rather old picture, but the college hasn't changed. It dates back to about the mid 1300s, and it has lovely memories for me. So I wondered whether I might be able to bring that into my journal. A little bit more map, music paper. I always like to bring that in if I can. Some bold pictures, strong paper, glossy, and let's just share the beautiful colours and the characters of Rupert Bear. So I pulled that out of a Rupert Bear annual. So these are some of the pages that I want to try to select from to put in one of these covers. I will whittle it down, I'll trim them down, and then we'll fold them and sew them into the journal cover. I've reduced the selection of papers that I had to 12 sheets, and in order to choose the particular papers I had to make a decision as to which of the covers I was going to use, and the reason I do that first is to just give me a sense of the tone and the colours and the designs that I want to pull from in that larger collection of papers today. So these were the two that shouted at me. I love the size of this, I love the flamboyance of this butterfly. It's ludicrously large to put on the front of a cover, but that's exactly what I want. I want that fantasy feeling. And this one is just super bold. I think it's very realistic, and I like the fact that the dark on the leaves is complemented by the dark matte that we put in this little piece behind. So I'm rather torn as to which to choose. Maybe I'll go for the darker one, and we can always do another. So I'll have that on the left and just sense check the pages that I chose before I cut them down and try and make them into a signature. So I finished with, in no particular order, a children's page, a bird book page, a glossy page with flowers, music paper which I did reduce in size, a map page, some glorious woodland scenery, and those cranberry coloured berries, bluey toned scrapbook paper, children's book page with large font, light textbook piece of paper, a functional page, lovely strong relatively white paper, and then I'm going to see if I can get my Cambridge College in. Let's have a go. The first thing I want to do as I choose my papers is decide which is going to be the centre. And if this is going to be the centre, I need to think about how that's going to fold in and fold out. So folding this cover in half, I know that it is about 14.5 centimetres wide and just over 22 centimetres in height. So that is 5.5 inches roughly in width, 9 inches or so in height. If I'm going to preserve most of this picture, and it does overlap, then I'm going to have to trim some of it down or fold it. I think what I'm going to do is protect as much of it as possible and have it as a bit of a fold out. I will decide how much of it I'm going to fold up But I'm not going to trim this off. I'm going to fold that back. And this means I don't lose the picture or any of the text at the bottom. But it means that when I get to the middle page, I can pull that down. The other challenge now then is the width of it, which is excessive, but I think I'm okay trimming some of that off. I'm not really losing too much of the picture. I can just pull this down and see all of this. The alternative is to not have it actually running through the centre, and perhaps that's actually a better solution. So I think what I'll do is have this side folded there, and I'm just looking at where the fold is in my cover so that I know that this will fit. I will fold that over, and then I can just fold this back, and that gives me a solution to preserving an image in its entirety that I can fold out, fold back and keep the whole thing. So now I have something as a centre. I have got a feeling of the, let's say, the design of all of these papers, and I can start to think about how the others will fit around it. What I'll do is fold, trim, and then I'll think about the order in which the papers go. And I may not always fold in half. So again, if this is my maximum width that I want the papers to be, I could have this folded in half, or I could do something a bit different and just have an image there in its entirety and fold this back. I'm just looking by eye as to how wide it should be, but I think testing it, that will work. So I'll make a little pile here of all the papers as they're folded. This looks that's perfect in terms of height. Do I want that to be a fold out? I don't think I do. So what I'm going to do is have that folded there. And I'm going to trim it off. For some reason, when I use patterned scrapbook paper, I don't really like it to be an extra fold out. I feel like the pattern is interesting enough and I shouldn't really be having fold outs here and here. I've preserved that feature, the fold out feature, for book pages, which is really what I'm trying to use as the majority of the pages in this junk journal. So my strong piece, which I will probably paint on, and therefore we can always think about having pages sideways. I really like that. It looks rather functional and instructive, this sheet. I like the browns in the colour, so when I look at pages like this, I'm not just looking at texture, I'm looking at these colours, and I've got some natural colours here and a contrast in the chrome of the tap. Really like that one. I'll also think about, when I put the pages together, which way up I want them to go, noting that I'll sometimes have a tattered edge. And also, if I've got some kind of title, I will think about whether I want that to be feeling like it's at the bottom and adding weight to the bottom of the page, or do I want it to be bringing your eye to the top of the page here. So we've got choices. Even when we've chosen individual pages, we can make lots of design decisions about the positioning of a page, which way we actually fold it, what do we want the eye to see when we turn those pages. A lot of fun when we choose on the order of these pages. I really like the festive feel of this one, and I'm wondering if I can protect that image in its entirety. It's too high for the journal as a whole, but what if we turn it that way and then I fold back? So I'm going to fold back in a way where I don't break that picture. That will protect the image. I don't mind that it's on its side. And if I fold over this way, then I have a page, glossy, strong picture, and a couple of pockets naturally built into the page. So I will glue those, just put that on the side in the pile. And I have the same situation with this one, so it works well this way. I think I will just do a fold up on this one. I don't want to lose this picture, so I'm going to fold that one up and then fold it over, which means that when I open it, the majority of that picture will be visible, and I'll have a little space here as a pocket, and here I'm really not losing too much, and I've got that gorgeous fox on the side. Beautiful images. I do like to preserve and use as many of the pretty pictures as possible. If I folded it the other way, that might make more sense actually. I'll be seeing more of this. This would be upside down, but then again maybe that doesn't matter. Right, change of heart then. I'll fold it back, I see more of the picture, I get two pockets, and the fact that it's a cute little dormouse on its side doesn't matter at all. Maps. So this is just slightly too big. I'm just going to decide where to trim it. I think I need to trim it both widthways and height, or I could do a fold. I don't like this side as much, so if I do fold I'm going to hide some of this, but I think what I'll do is a fold up and then a bit of a trim on one side. So now I have a better width and absolutely fine for me to fold, which I think I will do in the middle on this one. What I'll do again is just put a little bit of glue under here, and I'll have a couple of tuck spots for maybe tags and some pockets. And the decorating for this journal I will be doing in part 3, the final part of this series. So we'll have a lot of fun in the next video, adding tags, pockets, belly bands. I'll show you how to make some different pockets, and I have lots of videos on my channel as well for making pockets, which would go really well in this and other junk journals. I've got a really big one that I'm thinking I might put on the inside of the cover. So if you're playing along and making your collage cover and you're putting together the signature, maybe think about pulling from your little collection any tags, belly bands and pockets that you have, or you could even get a head start and make some of those up as well. And we'll have a lot of fun next week adding them to this, along with some stamps and maybe a tiny bit of watercolour, just to bring that decoration and the journal to a close, just to really finish it off. Beautiful colours on this one, nice height if I have it on its side. I think this is a great candidate for a fold from the side, so I think what I will do is fold that in and then fold it back beyond itself, so it's more like something that you can just tuck from the side and see what we've got. And if that's going to go about there, I think I'll fold along just so that I see the majority of that rose. So there are lots of ways in which you can just play around with folding to keep as much of the picture in the page as possible and protect some of those lovely images, rather than the fold for the place where you want to sew and divide the pages, cutting up your picture. And sometimes they don't naturally fall in the right place. This one I've been quite lucky with, so the birds fall in the middle if I fold it in half. And again, I think I will fold this back, just keeping those lovely birds on the other side intact. And I've just kept the title here, Sedge Warbler. Isn't that lovely? So this would be a page where I might put a little pocket down here. I might have something where I maybe add a pocket with some washi and that could fold out. So I don't cover up the images. I'm not going to paint on top of those. They're just too pretty. And just to be careful, I'm going to fold, perhaps not quite in the middle, so that I don't cut through each of these two chaps. And it's still not too wide for the cover. So it's great to have your cover just sitting on your desk so that you can check the width as you go through. I feel like we're doing quite well here. What do you think? Give me a comment down below. Do you find it really easy to put together your signatures and choose your papers? And what criteria do you use when you're pulling out a selection and choosing which to put in? One thing I might do with this is use the fact that it is a double, and the majority of the pictures on this are towards the lower half. So I think what I'm going to do is cut this one, trim it. I might have to lose the peak of the castle, but the story is told in this beautiful image. I will trim it about here, and then I'll have some fold out, so that'll be a lot of fun when it's in our journal. I'll just make a mark where I want that to go, maybe about there. Sometimes it's easy to just procrastinate and take far too long making our decisions, and I am trying just to be a little bit more intuitive and spontaneous as I put the pages together and not get too stuck. I've been tidying my craft room and using up my scraps. I've been using up pieces of paper and putting things away, and it's all really helping with the creative flow, with making me feel calm and happy in my craft room, which is what this is all about for me. So that is just a stunning picture, and I want that to be something that I see in total. The height is perfect. So all I'm going to do with these two pieces of paper is I could fold that in, or I could have it as one further towards the back of the journal. I think I will. One of the considerations I have as I put these pages together is not having too many of the most pretty pictures that you come across being those that you see as you start from the front of the journal. So as you're paging through, sometimes it's tempting to put all of those beautiful pictures in the front half, and I do want to balance this. So that is now a gorgeous one towards the back of the journal as a fold out. I've preserved Mr. Rat. So Mr. Rat and, is it Thumbelina, are still very happy friends together. And I think what I will do is a super gusset on this one, see if I can get that to work. If I fold about here, fold it well into the page, and fold it back, then although the picture isn't visible, I haven't cut it in two in the middle where the spine goes, and that can be one that just pulls out like that. And sometimes I like to put a little marker on that says pull here, so we'll get to see the picture. So now I've trimmed down my pages and I've glued the ones that we made little pockets out of. I just thought I'd show you how I do one of those. So the wildlife page was one that we folded up and then we folded in half, and I want these to be little areas where I can tuck things. So all I do simply is put a run of a firm glue, so this is a Pritt stick, not a watery one, it needs to be quite strong, and I put that just on the outsides and fold that up. I don't worry about the inside here in the middle, because when I fold it over there's enough strength in that fold to act as a little pocket. And I've ordered these in a particular order so that I don't have too many similar things next to each other, and I'll do a flip through just at the end when we've sewn it up to show you how that finishes, how it looks. I want to put this one in just before my collage there. So now we have the signature 12 sheets of eclectic beautiful papers. I'm going to use my little pegs, hold them together, put some holes in both this and the cover, and then we'll sew it together. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually put the holes in the cover, then I'll use the cover so that I can get the holes in absolutely the right place in the signature. And for a cover this size, I think my traditional figure of 8 method will work. So I'll find the middle, put a dot, and then I'm going to put a dot roughly 2/3 of the way along. I just want the hole to be in a place where it's going to grip the majority of the pages when I sew them in. So I think for a cover this size I'll go to about 6 centimetres out, and I'll just do exactly the same. Put a dot 6 centimetres out here. And I'm just going to use my needle to make a hole. I've folded the cover over, I haven't given it any depth of spine, so there's nothing complicated. I'm literally just pushing this needle through. It happens to be slightly bent, but that's just because that's how it's made. It's a darning needle. And I pushed it through the 2 to 3 sheets that we have from the collaging that we did on the cover. So I'm going to pick this up and use the positions of the holes to make a mark on here, and this is the way that I've found to reduce the risk of getting the holes in the wrong place. If you have a signature which is very close in size, the pages are close in size to the cover, you want to be really accurate then with where you put your holes, because to get them out of place means the pages are going to tuck out at the top or the bottom, and that isn't ideal. So I'm looking for where these holes are and then making just a little bit of a mark with my pen, which we won't see because we're going to stick the needle through. Now, one of the tips I have for when we are putting a signature in that has these fold outs is we don't want to put the needle and the sewing right through the fold out. So where I don't want that to be a pocket and I want to be able to pull that down, I then need to open that up and put the hole where it should be. So I'm going to come back with this. The hole is there. That's actually a bit easier to see. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit of force, push my needle through. Not too difficult, slightly surprised. And now I can cut my string and sew it in. So let's measure our string. 1, 2, 3, and 1 for the pot. And I'm starting from the outside. I like to have my ties on the outside. Let me show you. So with this one, I tend to like the tie to be on the outside and at the top. So I'll start from the outside and I'm going to sew from the outside, leaving plenty of string here so it doesn't come through, and then we will start on our signature. So I obviously want that to be that way up, checking, yep. Going from the outside through to the centre. The pegs are really useful at this stage, holding your pages. As soon as we've got a couple of the threads of string through the second hole, then the relative positions of the pages should allow me to take these off and life will be a bit easier. Back through the middle. There we go. Just pull that through. And I'm keeping it all very loose so that it's easy to go back through the cover. So through the middle hole, pull that string through. I'm just going to go through the outside, the bottom hole of the cover, bring that through, and at this stage I'm going to take the pegs off, trusting that the relative positions are secure, and I will bring the needle back through, and of course remembering that this centre sheet has a fold out. So I'll just hold that down while I bring the needle through. So far so good, you can see it will just sit underneath. And now I'm just going to go back through the middle hole one last time, and at that point I will check that everything's in the right position, it's the right way up, and then I'll tie it off. So before we just tie it, checking that the pages are sitting within the cover and that they are in the order that I wanted them to be, that they're the right way up. I position them in different places, top and bottom. I don't want everything flush to the bottom or the top. Nothing is stuck in the wrong place, and I've got so much interest and variety. And this is my junk journal made with lovely old book pages. We have a gorgeous collage cover and a tactile 3D butterfly, and the signature is filled with beautiful images and variety and contrast in colours and texture and tone. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss next week's video, where I'll be filling this with envelopes and belly bands and pockets, just having a lot of fun. And give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, because that really does help. I hope to see you soon.